Chapter 716. His face seemed to be hidden in a cloud of fog, and she couldn't see it clearly. That voice also sounded familiar, as though she had heard it somewhere before. Chu Luiyue inexplicably believed that the who was calling her. Who is this man? Why is he calling my name? Moreover, it's in such a familiar tone. Chu Luiyue wanted to walk forward uncontrollably, but her body seemed to be trapped on the spot, and she couldn't move an inch. There was a distance between the two of them, and she couldn't get close to him. That man didn't seem to be in a hurry, and he even extended a hand, as though waiting for her to go over. He stood tall, and the mountain breeze blew his black clothes. He was like a devil's snare blooming in the dark night, but he was also floating like an immortal. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she couldn't say a single word. There seemed to be a transparent barrier between the two of them, and they couldn't get close to each other. You are. Chu Luiyue instinctively knew this man, and her chest was filled with an impulse to call out his name. It seemed that as long as she called out his name, she could remember who he was. However, Chu Luiyue couldn't call out his name. Her heart gradually became anxious. Suddenly, a golden ray of light floated past her eyes. Chu Luiyue's eyes instantly turned into a golden dazzle. She couldn't see anything clearly. In the next moment, it was as if something had violently tugged at her. Her body fell downwards. Bam! Everything in front of her dissipated with a loud bang. Thousands of miles away, in an elegant and unique attic, a figure was sitting by the window. He had changed back to black clothes today, and he looked a little cold. At this moment, there was a chessboard in front of him. Opposite him was 36 respected Elder Ming. His slender and fair fingers picked up a white chess piece, and when it was in midair, his movements suddenly paused. 36 respected Elder Ming raised his head and looked at the man opposite him strangely. Your Highness. He had always been decisive when playing chess, and he would never stop in the middle of a game. It seemed that he was thinking about something. 36 respected Elder Ming was about to ask again when he suddenly saw a golden flame ignite on his fingertip. The flames quickly condensed into half a rune in the air before quickly dissipating. The chess piece between his fingers instantly turned into a wisp of white smoke. It slowly drifted away. 36 respected Elder Ming narrowed his eyes. His Highness actually used such a seal at this time. Your Highness, did something happen? Rong Xiu shook his head, and his thin lips raised a light smile. Nothing. It was just that. She had opened the seal on the pyramid faster than he had expected. 36 respected Elder Ming looked at his languid expression, the smile at the corner of his lips, and the faint pampering and pride in his eyes. He could already guess a little. It has something to do with the young princess consort? Rong Xiu smiled, picked up another piece, and put it down. Yes. She should be thinking about me. Rong Xiu said calmly and confidently. 36 respected Elder Ming instantly curled his lips in disdain. It was fine if he directly said that he was thinking about his wife, but he had to say that she was thinking about him. How shameless! Your Highness, your skin seems to be getting thicker, 36 respected Elder Ming said impolitely. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. He didn't mind him saying that and only raised his eyebrows. I was just speaking the truth, but I don't know what she was thinking about me? Chu Luiyue suddenly woke up and gasped for air. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat, and her clothes were already drenched in sweat, sticking to her body. It was extremely uncomfortable. A soft touch came over. Chu Luiyue looked up in a daze. It was little Nine who came over with a worried look in her eyes. She seemed to have woken up from a dream. That scene just now. It didn't seem like an illusion, but a memory. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips tightly, and a trace of panic appeared in her heart. This memory couldn't possibly belong to Chu Luiyue's body. Then, could it be hers? But in the 20 years of her previous life, she had never had such a memory. Could it be that she had really forgotten something? Chu Luiyue unconsciously clenched her fists. As the breeze blew, her body felt cold. When this scene first appeared, she only thought that it was an illusion. But this time, she could clearly feel that the entire scene had become much clearer. It was as if something that had been sealed for a long time was taken out, and the dust was wiped away, gradually revealing its original appearance. Chu Luiyue rarely had such emotions. She faintly felt that she seemed to have missed out on something important, but she didn't even know it. What made her even more uneasy was that the man in black seemed to be someone very important to her. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and suppressed the chaotic emotions in her heart. She looked at the black pyramid in her dantian again and found that the tiny crack on it was still there, but the faint glow that was emitted from it had disappeared. At a glance, there seemed to be nothing but darkness under the crack. The seal was indeed broken, but it wasn't completely opened. Chu Luiyue tried to shake the seal, but found that it was futile. Girl, that crack was split open by the power of the heavenly Tao when you were contracting with this red-tailed phoenix. It won't be that easy for you to open it with your own strength. Taizu's voice suddenly sounded. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Contract? Heavenly Tao? You still don't know? This red-tailed phoenix is already your contracted divine beast. When a 9th-grade magical beast breaks through to become a divine beast, the power of the heavenly Tao that it summons is often hidden in the 9th Tianlei. Just now, this little guy almost didn't make it through. It was only after contracting with you that it crossed this threshold. And the power of the heavenly Tao naturally divided a portion of it into your body. Chu Luiyue's mind raced. Now that she had changed her body, she naturally needed to contract with Little Nine again. Now that she thought about it, it should be when Little Nine used its claws to pierce her neck, it inadvertently succeeded in contracting? Chu Luiyue touched her neck. The wound wasn't big, and although Little Nine had almost lost its mind and attacked her, but at the last moment, it seemed to have relied on its instincts to avoid all the fatal points. Now that the wound had coagulated, it would recover after resting for a while. At that time, she only wanted to summon Little Nine back and help Little Nine cross the 9th Tianlei. She didn't expect that by a freak combination of factors, she would directly contract with it. It could be seen that the fate between them couldn't be cut off no matter what. The thing in your body received the power of the heavenly Tao and became like this. It's a pity that the power of the seal is too strong, and it seems to have automatically repaired itself. Taizu's voice was somewhat regretful. He had thought that he could take advantage of this opportunity to completely remove the seal. Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment, then said firmly, "There will be a day when I will open this seal." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 717. Then, a red light flashed in front of her eyes, and Little Nine's enormous figure rapidly changed and finally became the size of a palm. Its entire body was red, and its tail, in particular, was like a burning flame that was intense and intense. Its pair of round eyes were extremely gorgeous, like the most precious gemstone, dazzling and eye-catching. Chu Luiyue reached out her hand, and Little Nine flew into her palm. She didn't blink at all, and her heart was filled with joy and admiration. Although she wasn't sure how Little Nine escaped the pursuit back then, nor did she know how it transformed into Dumpling and found her, but these weren't the most important. It was still here and had returned to her side. That was enough. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and said in her heart, "Little Nine, I'm afraid I can't call you Little Nine anymore. Why don't I call you Dumpling?" The 9-colored heavenly pheasant's identity was already sensitive enough, and if she called it Little Nine again, it would really be too ostentatious. Anyway, she had already called it Dumpling for so long, and it had always been by her side using this name, so it was most suitable to continue calling it this way. Little Nine nodded seriously and rubbed its head against her palm gently. The furry touch and its extremely obedient appearance made Chu Luiyue's heart melt. She said softly, "Dumpling, I'll bring you home." When they saw that the enormous red-tailed phoenix in the sky became the size of a palm, everyone standing below was stunned. Then, when they saw it fly onto Chu Luiyue's shoulder and the human and beast landed together, everyone was even more confused. In the end, when they saw Chu Luiyue patting that red-tailed phoenix's head dotingly and the latter rubbing against her neck like a spoiled child, other than Lei Laosi and the other two who had been guarding, everyone else instantly felt bad. What's going on? Where's the majestic mythical beast? Where's the ferocious red-tailed phoenix? Why did it suddenly become such a tiny thing? Most importantly, it's so intimate with Chu Luiyue? Looking at Chu Luiyue standing in the middle and the red lump on her shoulder, the surroundings fell into an eerie silence. A gust of wind blew past, and only the rustling of leaves could be heard. Chu Luiyue looked around and chuckled. "What's wrong with you guys?" This voice was like a stone falling into a calm lake, instantly stirring up countless waves. Lu Yu's name? What's wrong with you? Mu Hongyu widened her almond-shaped eyes as she asked in shock. Isn't this a mythical beast? Why did it become so small? Also, why is it in you? You, after stuttering for a long while, muses of the heavenly pheasant. Chu Luiyue. It's probably because it's this big when it's not in combat form. But I'm not very sure. Before Chu Luiyue could finish speaking, Dumpling nodded vigorously. Of course. Otherwise, it would be so troublesome to be so big. It's still the most convenient to be with master like this. Chu Luiyue turned to look at it and said seriously, "Oh, it seems like I guessed right. Look, even it said so." Everyone, what did it say? No, that's not the key to the problem. Lu Yu, I'm not asking about this. Mu Hongyu opened her mouth with difficulty. She looked conflicted. Yi Ranran took the initiative to help explain and whispered, Lu Yu, what Hongyu wants to ask is, you and this red-tailed phoenix, what's going on? Wasn't it very fierce to you just now? Why is it now? Everyone had clearly seen what had happened before. This red-tailed phoenix was very rude to Chu Luiyue in the beginning. It even seemed like it wanted to kill Chu Luiyue several times. Why did the human and beast become so close in the blink of an eye? Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Oh, you're asking about this? She smiled. Her eyes were curved, and they were as bright as the Milky Way. Because it's now my contracted magical beast. Because it's now my contracted magical beast? Everyone's expression turned sluggish for a moment. What did you say? The one who spoke this time was not Mu Hongyu, nor was it Yi Ranran. It was actually Jianghu. After being stunned for a moment, his heart was filled with shock, and he almost blurted out this sentence. Chu Luiyue glanced at him indifferently with a faint smile. Didn't I say it clearly enough just now? I said, this red-tailed red phoenix is my magical beast now. Her tone was so casual, as if she was talking about an insignificant matter. But in everyone's ears, it was like thunder. Red-tailed phoenix. Such a divine beast had actually contracted with Chu Luiyue? Elder Qiushi, who was beside him, finally came back to his senses. He stared blankly at the small ball on Chu Luiyue's shoulder, and his old face trembled violently. Impossible! This is absolutely impossible! There were so many people present, so why was it Chu Luiyue's turn? The red-tailed phoenix is a divine beast, how could it take a fancy to you? Although these words were unpleasant, they were very straightforward, and they also asked the same question in everyone's hearts. If the red-tailed phoenix really wanted to find a human to contract, why did it choose Chu Luiyue among so many people? Chu Luiyue raised her chin slightly, revealing the scratch on her neck. At this moment, there were still traces of blood on it. Just now, Dumpling was swallowed by it, so I wanted to save Dumpling. But I didn't expect that an accident would happen in the middle. The red-tailed phoenix's claws pierced my neck, and I inexplicably contracted with it. I also just found out about it. Chu Luiyue explained in a sincere tone, and her expression was somewhat innocent. My magical beast was swallowed by it, so I could only use it to repay my debt. Everyone was speechless. The divine beast that millions of people yearned for, and you just made a contract with it like you had seen a ghost and took it for yourself? You even used a third-grade blood ferret to exchange for a divine beast. Everyone fell into a strange dead silence again. There was no choice, it was too shocking. It was the first time they saw a divine beast, and before they could see it clearly, Chu Luiyue had already beaten them to it. Most importantly, the whole thing was too coincidental. There was no room for anyone to interrupt. Everyone saw with their own eyes that Chu Luiyue's blood ferret was indeed swallowed by the 9-colored heavenly pheasant at that time. It was reasonable for Chu Luiyue to want to save it. Moreover, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant should have planned to kill her as well. Otherwise, Chu Luiyue wouldn't have that scratch on her neck. If it was under normal circumstances, it wouldn't matter if it killed 1 or 100 people. But the key was that it was breaking through at that time. In the end, it contracted with it just like that? Mu Hongyu gave her a thumbs up in admiration. Yi Ranran was also excited. Lu, you're amazing. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled very modestly. Not at all. I was just a little lucky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 7:18. Wasn't it because his luck was a little better? How could she have the nerve to say such a thing? Was this a good point? Her luck was clearly heaven-defying. How could she let others live? Elder Qiushi almost couldn't catch his breath, and his face turned red. He pointed at Chu Luiyue, his hands trembling, and his lips trembling for a long time, but he couldn't say a word. What could he say? What else could he say? Everything happened in front of everyone, and he couldn't even slander her. That red-tailed phoenix had already contracted with her, so what else could he do? Chu Luiyue looked at him with concern and asked, Elder Qiushi, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Elder Qiushi retracted his hand, waved his sleeves fiercely, and turned his head away. Out of sight, out of mind. Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. Of course, she could see through Elder Qiushi's thoughts. It was nothing more than that he had some ulterior motives for Dumpling. For this reason, he didn't even care about Shangguanwan. But why didn't he think about how he was qualified? After so many years, his greedy nature still hadn't changed at all. A green shadow suddenly flew over. Chu Luiyue took a closer look. Red Demon? She was still a little worried when Red Demon hit the barrier just now. But judging from its current appearance, well, there shouldn't be any problem. Red Demon glared at Dumpling angrily. Dumpling turned around and didn't look at it. She had seen it for so many years. What was there to see? Red Demon was so angry that its small body almost turned into a ball. With a chila sound, its body burned with green flames. It had felt that something was wrong earlier, and now it seemed that its guess was right. It was Red Demon. To think that it had been sad for a long time back then. After all this time, Red Demon was fine. It even broke through to a divine beast. Red Demon thought that it wasn't even a 9th-grade magical beast now. It was 1 level lower than Red Demon, and it was extremely angry. As it was angry, it began to cry. It definitely wouldn't be able to defeat Red Demon in the future. Thinking of this, Hong Yao was filled with sorrow, and bean-sized tears fell down. It hurriedly turned around and wiped the tears away with its wings. However, his tears flowed endlessly like a broken dam, drenching half of his wings. It had bullied it many times in the past, and it would definitely get it back in the future. Chu Luiyue felt both amused and distressed. Just as he was about to walk over, he paused and looked at Mu Qinghe helplessly. Vice Admiral Mu Qinghe also felt a headache coming on. He could control Hong Yao's willful temper, but at times like this, even he was helpless. Hong Yao, come back! Mu Qinghe shouted. Hong Yao didn't want to move, but thinking that there were so many people watching, she had to go back, sobbing. Mu Qinghe frowned and looked at it. You weren't injured just now, so why are you crying? Hong Yao glared at him and turned its head away. What do you know? Mu Qinghe, who was despised for no reason, was speechless. You're Miss Chu Luiyue, right? The man at the side, who hadn't spoken, finally spoke. His expression was calm, and there was a smile on his lips as if he wasn't shocked by this incident. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes flickered. She nodded. May I know who you are, Qini? His long and narrow eyes narrowed as he glanced at Chu Luiyue and the red-tailed phoenix on her shoulder and smiled. Miss Chu, you're really lucky. We've been waiting for this 9-colored heavenly pheasant for a long time, but we didn't expect it to choose you in the end. Chu Luiyue coughed. I'm really sorry, it's nothing. It's not unreasonable for fate to be decided by the heavens. There are so many people here, but it still made a contract with Miss Chu. This shows that some things are really destined," said Qin Yi with a faint smile. He spoke slowly and calmly, making one feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Chu Luiwei revealed a grateful expression. "Thank you, Big Brother Qin and Big Brother Lei, for your understanding. Lu Yu is very grateful." Lei Laoxi's eyes twitched harshly, and his legs turned to jelly as he almost knelt down. "Damn it. It's fine if you want to act, but I really can't afford to be called Big Brother Lei." He hurriedly glanced at Qin Yi at the side but saw that his big brother still looked very calm. "Miss Chu, you're too polite." Lei Laoxi's respect for his big brother rose spontaneously. "Her Highness calls you Big Brother, but you can really handle it," Chu Liwei said very sincerely. "I owe the two of you a favor regarding the legendary fiend. I'll definitely think of a way to compensate the two of you in the future. How about that?" Lei Laoxi couldn't help it. "No need, no need. Originally, since it chose you in the first place, we can only be envious of it. If you weren't around, it might have just left on its own. It wouldn't have made a contract with a human." Chu Luiwei glanced at Lei Laoxi with a smile in her eyes. Even though these two people's appearances and auras are different from before, their temperaments haven't changed at all. She thanked the two of them once more and didn't say anything else. "Where's the third princess?" She scanned her surroundings and finally landed on the spot where Shangguan Wan disappeared. That deep pit had been filled up with messy tree roots and soil at some point in time. When she asked this, everyone then remembered that Shangguan Wan had already disappeared for quite some time. Because the red-tailed phoenix caused too much of a commotion just now, they didn't have time to think about Shangguan Wan's situation. Everyone quietened down and didn't know how to continue the conversation. Could it be that we have to go down and find Shangguan Wan? Chu Luiwei turned around and looked at Jiang Yuqing. "Eldest young Master Jiang, the third princess has been missing for so long. Aren't you worried at all?" Jiang Yuqing was about to speak when the ground suddenly shook. Red miasma floated over from all directions. The surrounding trees started to wither at a visible speed. The gigantic Wan Yeshan in the middle suddenly raised several tree roots. Qin Yi's expression turned cold. Someone touched the mother tree's seal. Chu Luiwei was shocked. "There's actually a seal on this tree?" Qin Yi stared at the Wan Yeshan that looked like it was about to go crazy, and his face froze. "Hurry and retreat." The moment he said that, cries and wails suddenly came from the surrounding forest. At that moment, it seemed like thousands of people were crying in pain. "Digression. Tomorrow at 12 a.m., speaking of which, should I update one chapter a day or should I save 20 chapters and update them all at once? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IG. Chapter 719. The chilly wind blew, and the sorrowful cries sounded as if they were in hell. This bone-chilling sound made one's hair stand on end, and it even chilled one to the bone. Everyone retreated in unison. More and more red miasma started surging toward them. The surrounding trees were quickly withering. Only the incomparably thick mother tree in the middle did not show any signs of withering. Instead, it seemed to have been nourished by something. Every leaf seemed to have become even more emerald green. Every branch also became taller and straighter. The most shocking thing was that it seemed to be growing slowly and steadily in the midst of the red miasma. What's going on? Mu Hongyu hugged the golden mane bear cub in her arms nervously and looked at Chu Liwei. "Lu Yu, the miasma is coming over. This situation is exactly the same as what we saw when we turned around. Could it be that we're also going to chop?" Qin Yi suddenly waved his sleeves, and a faint green barrier instantly enveloped the few of them. The red miasma drifted over, but when it came into contact with the green barrier, it quickly retreated, as if it had encountered something terrifying. However, Qin Yi's barrier only surrounded the few people near him. Perhaps because Elder Qiushi, Jiang Yuqing, and Mu Qinghe were standing further away, they weren't protected by the barrier. Seeing that Qin Yi's barrier easily blocked off the red miasma, Elder Qiushi immediately said, This, young Master Qin, there's still us. This red miasma doesn't look easy to deal with. If Qin Yi can take the initiative to help, We can save a lot of energy. Qin glanced at him lightly and said in a seemingly smiling manner, "My apologies. My abilities are limited, and helping these few people is already my limit." Elder Qiushi was stunned. "Hey you, Elder Qiushi, big brother Qin, and we just met by chance, and we're already very grateful that he helped us. How can you order him to do anything?" Chu Lue lightly interrupted Elder Qiushi's words and smiled very sincerely. "Besides, don't you see that I'm also alone?" Qin Yi's barrier actually only enveloped Mu Hongyu and the other two. Lei Laosi and her weren't inside. Chu Lue set up a barrier around himself, and the miasma drifted far away. Chu Lue felt slightly relieved. Dumpling rubbed its cheek, and its gem-like eyes were dazzling. Chu Lue blinked and immediately understood what Dumpling meant. "Does this mean that with it around, the miasma won't hurt me?" Lei Laosi raised his hammer and hammered the ground harshly. A transparent barrier instantly appeared. It enveloped him. Several streaks of icy blue lightning danced on it, crackling loudly. Lei Laosi looked at Elder Qiushi in disdain. "In this mystic forest, if you don't have the ability, you can't rely on anyone. In the end, only death awaited." Elder Qiushi's expression was ugly. "Isn't this pointing at my nose and scolding me for being useless?" Just as he was about to speak, Jianghu stopped him with a stern gaze. "It was already embarrassing enough just now. Do you think it's not enough?" Elder Qiushi could only shut his mouth indignantly. Mu Qinghe took out a jade bottle. "Eldest young master, the pill inside is the antidote for the miasma. If the miasma accidentally invades your body, you just have to take this pill." As she spoke, she handed one to Jianghu and another to Elder Qiushi. Elder Qiushi couldn't wait to take the elixir away. Jianghu glanced at the pill in his hand. "At the start, you didn't seem to have mentioned this." Mu Qinghe's expression was calm. Because the last general also didn't expect the poison of the miasma to become so scary. "When we came here previously, we could set up a barrier to block most of the miasma outside, but now, we have no choice but to use the antidote. The last general also just thought of this. Also, there's only one bottle of antidote." Jianghu looked at him. Mu Qinghe had always been serious and cautious in doing things. It was absolutely impossible for her to only think of this pill now. Moreover, even if the quantity was small, she could have given one to Shangguan first. After all, her identity was the most important in this group of people. But Mu Qinghe didn't do so. That was clearly showing that she didn't want to give it to her. Mu Qinghe's expression was indifferent, and she looked very magnanimous. Jianghu didn't say much. Shangguan had always disliked Mu Qinghe. Didn't Mu Qinghe feel the same way about her? Moreover, Shangguan had many tricks up her sleeve, so she didn't need these things. Mu Qinghe looked at Chu Lue again and handed over the bottle expressionlessly. Chu Lue raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect Mu Qinghe to be willing to give him such a precious antidote, even though she was the one who gave it to him after refining it. Chu Lue smiled very politely. Before he said anything, he heard Mu Qinghe say, "Ms. Chu, please return the black shield that was snatched away by the 9-colored heavenly pheasant. So she's here to ask for something." Chu Liuyue's expression became a little dull. When Shangguan jumped down, he didn't think of a way to save her. Instead, he was more concerned about this black shield. Interesting. Her fan-like eyelashes trembled slightly. When she looked up, her eyes were already calm. "Thank you for your kind intentions, Vice Admiral Mu. However, I have the red-tailed phoenix beside me, so I don't really need this antidote. You should keep it for yourself. As for that black shield, I'll naturally return it to the third princess when I find her." Mu Qinghe pursed his lips. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination, but he felt that the current Chu Lue seemed to be a little different from the Chu Lue he saw in country Yaochen at the start. The previous Chu Lue was polite but also a little timid. However, the current her already dared to reject him directly. That's right. After all, she's contracted with a legendary fiend. She's definitely different from before. Mu Qinghe nodded and swallowed a pill before keeping the jade bottle. "That miasma seems to be surging towards that mother tree." Yi Ranran exclaimed. When the crowd heard that, they all looked over and indeed saw that the miasma was slowly but firmly floating towards the tree in the middle. Its branches and leaves rustled as if it was swallowing the miasma. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly and looked at Qin. Big brother Qin, is this related to the seal on the mother tree that you mentioned previously? Qin nodded. The mystic forest is filled with miasma every day, but it's usually in the periphery and has never drifted to the center. Actually, it wasn't like it had never happened before. More than a year ago, when they first arrived here, they coincidentally saw the same scene. However, at that time, the seal had just cracked open, and the 9-colored heavenly pheasant chose to rest on this tree. Its existence mended that crack and was equivalent to adding a second layer of strength to the seal. Hence, from the time it hibernated here, nothing like this had happened in the mystic forest. Now that it had left, the seal would naturally be easily destroyed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 720. That Wan Yeshan was still growing nonstop, and a few tree roots seemed to be unable to hold back as they pulled out from the ground and flew up. They danced wildly with the wind. The tree roots, which looked like they were filled with blood, swung wildly and emitted a frightening pressure. A thick, suffocating smell of blood spread out from within. It was also mixed with the smell of all sorts of rotting things. It was nauseating. Even though they were separated by a barrier, everyone could still feel it, and their expressions changed one after another. What exactly is down there? The thing inside those tree roots can't really be human blood, right? Yi Ranran couldn't help but mutter softly. Otherwise, there's really no way to explain this bloody smell. But if that's really the case, it's too chilling. Who knows whose blood this is? Jiang Yuqing and the rest didn't say anything. They were all dragged down before, so they naturally knew what was down there. Qin said, "We can't stay here any longer. We have to leave immediately." As he spoke, he glanced at Chu Luiwei without batting an eyelid. Chu Luiwei didn't turn back, but he also knew what Qin meant, so he nodded and agreed. That's right. This tree situation is very strange. If we stay here any longer, who knows what will happen? With that, she lifted her leg, intending to retreat again. However, Elder Qiushi immediately spoke up. "We can't leave. The third princess is still under that tree. If we leave just like that, what will happen to the third princess?" Chu Luiwei sneered in his heart. For such a long time just now, he didn't think about this matter at all. Now that dumpling belongs to me and I don't have any benefits to reap, he suddenly thought of it. Since Elder Qiushi cares so much, why don't you go down and take a look yourself? Elder Qiushi quickened his pace, rushed to Chu Luiwei and said coldly, "This red-tailed phoenix has been staying on this mother tree all this while. Now that it's become your fiend, it's naturally the most suitable for you to go down. Didn't you just say that with it around, this miasma isn't a problem for you?" Chu Luiwei knew that Elder Qiushi was shameless, but he didn't expect him to be so shameless as to say such words without batting an eyelid. Looking at his self-righteous expression, Chu Luiwei was so angry that he laughed. "What Elder Qiushi means is that you want me, the person with the lowest cultivation level here, to search for the third princess's whereabouts by myself. Aren't you thinking too highly of me?" However, Elder Qiushi refused to give up. "This divine beast is already yours. If you don't go, who will?" As expected, he's still holding a grudge about Dumpling. Chu Luiwei was well aware of the principle of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Unfortunately, Dumpling was in an emergency at the time and had no way to avoid these people. It wouldn't be long before this matter would spread like wildfire. Chu Luiwei knew that Dumpling's existence would cause a lot of trouble, but he didn't expect it to start now. "Elder Qiushi, actually, I'm also very worried about the third princess's whereabouts. It's not a problem for me to take the lead, but if we all go together, we'll have a better chance. What do you think?" Chu Luiwei couldn't be bothered to refuse and directly agreed to this matter. In fact, even if Elder Qiushi didn't mention it, she would still look for Shangguan Wan. At that time, she saw clearly that Shangguan Wan chose to jump down herself. It would be strange if there wasn't something fishy about this. Now that she was willing to look for her, Shangguan probably didn't want to be found. Since they wanted her to make a move, then she would inevitably drag the rest of the people down with her. Elder Qiuxi's expression changed slightly. He originally planned to let Chu Luiyue go down by herself, but he couldn't refute her words. Chu Luiyue looked at Jiang Yuqing and said with a smile, "Young Master Qiuxi is most worried about the third princess. Eldest young Master Jiang should be most worried about third princess. I think he will definitely go with me, right?" Jiang Yuqing's face was a little cold. "I don't want to go down at all. After all, I know what it's like down there. Also, I can feel that there's something wrong with my body. Even though I tried my best to regulate my breathing and barely recovered a little, my internal and external injuries haven't completely healed. If I encounter any danger again," however, he couldn't say no in front of so many people. "Of course." Jiang Yuqing's voice was so cold that it seemed to have frozen over. "This isn't appropriate." Qin Yi suddenly spoke up with a disapproving expression. "This mother tree's seal has already been broken, and nobody knows what kind of danger there will be. Even Old Four and I don't dare to fight head-on. If you go down now, you'll just be courting death. By then, not only will you not be able to find her, but you'll also lose your lives." Chu Liyue's brows moved slightly. She knew that Qin Yi was against her going down. However, she had to go this time. "Big brother Qin, we appreciate your good intentions. However, the third princess's whereabouts are unknown, and she's in danger. We can't just stand by and do nothing. Please take care of my friends." Mu Hongyu anxiously said. "Luyu, what do you mean by this? You don't want us to go together?" Upon hearing that, Chang Wanzhou didn't say anything and just walked straight toward Chu Luiyue. When he reached the green barrier, he held the cloud sky copper sword tightly and glanced at Qin. "If she goes, I'll go too." Even though Qin Yi was also very worried, he still couldn't help but laugh when he saw Chang Wanzhou like this. "Am I the only one who's worried about her? If Chu Luiyue insists on going, Old Four and I definitely won't stay outside." Boom! At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from behind the crowd. They turned around and saw that the ground in the distance had suddenly collapsed. Countless withered trees fell down. A gigantic ravine instantly appeared. Also, the area of this collapse was still spreading. Very quickly, the same scene started happening in other directions. Uneasiness surged in Chu Liyue's heart as he tipped his toes and flew up. When he saw the scene below clearly, even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but be shocked. The ground collapsed, and a ring-shaped ravine appeared with the mother tree as the center. The most important thing was that the area of the collapse actually started spreading outward. It was like an invisible wave that surged up continuously. The entire mystic forest actually started collapsing. The previously lush forest was now shrouded by the miasma and completely turned into a withered forest. The entire sky became dark once again. This time, it was different from the heaven and earth phenomenon that was caused when the nine-colored heavenly pheasant was about to break through. The entire place exuded a sinister and strange aura. Chu Luiyue then looked at the mother tree in the middle. Amidst the raging winds, all the trees were withering and being swallowed. Only this one was safe and sound and was even growing continuously. As Chu Luiyue looked at the vibrant green leaves, a guess suddenly flashed across his mind. Could it be that this mother tree is swallowing the other tree's strength? This thought made Chu Luiyue feel a chill in his heart. If I didn't guess wrongly, there should be a lot of people trapped under those trees like Jiang Yuqing, right? This current situation, Shengguan is under this mother tree. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveWeb. Chapter 721. A white light flashed across Chu Liyue's mind. She already knew that Shangguan must have a motive for purposely bringing so many people to the mystic forest. However, it was only now that Chu Luiyue finally understood what she wanted to do. She wanted to use these people's strength to recover her Yuan meridian and abilities. Many of the people who came had Daijing Yuan meridians, especially the disciples from the various clans. Almost all of them had Daijing Yuan meridians. After all, they were all the most outstanding seedlings selected from the various clans. Wanzheng competition, so this is what she's doing. She can't recover her Yuan meridian, so she's targeting other people's Yuan meridians? Although it sounded creepy, if this conjecture was true, then many of the things that had happened before had a reasonable explanation. Chu Luiyue was horrified. She was the clearest about how vicious Shangguan Wan was. However, she never expected that Shangguan Wan would actually dare to do this. How many talented cultivators is she going to attack? She actually dared to? For a moment, many emotions surged in Chu Luiyue's heart, and she didn't know what to say. Shangguan Wan's Yuan meridian was damaged by the fire in her Tianjing Yuan meridian back then. This kind of injury was basically unrecoverable. This was because the power of the Tianjing Yuan meridian was simply too strong. Even Chu Luiyue herself couldn't think of a way to help Shangguan Wan reconstruct her Yuan meridian. However, since she did this, it meant that she definitely had a way. Even if it was such a despicable and sinister method. Luyu? What's wrong? Yi Ranran looked up slightly and asked worriedly. The expression on Liu Yue's face doesn't seem right. This sound made Chu Luiyue return to her senses. She took a deep breath and landed back on the ground. Everyone turned to look at him. Chu Luiyue said in a low voice, "We can't leave. I'm afraid we can't leave." A few creases appeared on Qin Yi's forehead. The entire mystic forest is collapsing, except where we are. At the same time, underground. After Shangguan Wan jumped down, after falling for a long time, she finally landed in the swamp again. She took out a water pearl, and its faint glow illuminated the surroundings. Because she had been here once before, Shangguan Wan wasn't afraid or worried this time. Instead, she was a little excited. She looked around and her gaze suddenly froze. Not far away, there was something emitting a dark green fluorescent light. That light looked a little cold and strange. Shangguan Wan hesitated for a while, but still decided to approach. After getting closer, Shangguan Wan was surprised to find that there was a platform in the middle of the black swamp. The surrounding swamp surged, but there was one platform that remained unmoved. As for that dark green light, it was hanging above the platform. Suddenly, Shangguan Wan seemed to have stepped on something. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked down and pulled out one of her legs. Below, a head was surging up along with the swamp. That's what I stepped on just now. Most importantly, this head wasn't made of white bones. It was a human head that hadn't had time to rot. It was a pale face with bulging eyes and deeply sunken cheeks. It looked like it died with a grievance. Shangguan Wan felt disgusted and directly stepped on it again. When that thing was submerged by the black swamp again, Shangguan Wan patted her chest, closed her eyes, and let out a long sigh. Sure enough, the swamp below was flowing. When I dealt with this person just now, he seemed to be quite far away from here. I didn't expect to meet him again. Unlucky. Shangguan Wan quickly left that place and ran forward. Very quickly, she reached the stairs at the edge of the platform. There weren't any barriers here, so she could easily come up. Shangguan Wan shook off all the dirt on her body, before she looked at the ball of green fire again. It was really just a ball of fire. It was only the size of a palm and was quietly floating in the air. Shangguan Wan was a little puzzled. What is this? Judging from its position, this thing should be directly below the mother tree. Suddenly, a tree root swung over from another direction. Shangguan Wan was shocked and quickly bent down. However, the target of the tree root wasn't her, but the ball of fire. It flew over quickly but stopped in front of the ball of fire. A slender flame flew up and gently touched the tree root. The power contained in the tree root was continuously poured into the ball of fire. After a while, the tree root disappeared again. And the ball of fire was bigger than before. Shangguan Wan's heart was beating wildly. So, the power that was devoured was finally poured into this. If I take this ball of fire for myself, then wouldn't that power become mine? Thinking of this, her eyes lit up and she almost couldn't control the excitement in her heart. She took out a blood-red pill and quickly swallowed it. A moment later, the incomplete Yuan meridian in her body seemed to have been stimulated by some kind of power and became alive again. The skin on her entire body had turned red. Black lines were faintly discernible. It looked very strange. She raised her foot and was about to step forward when she suddenly stopped. This thing might be dangerous. Shangguanwan's heart stirred and suddenly took out a set of armor. It was the pure gold sacred armor. She quickly put it on and took a step forward with a peace of mind. Digression. I feel like I'm writing a ghost story. Facepalm. 6 o'clock. Since everyone said that they want to update at 20, then let's do it together. Every monthly ticket is a ladder to explosive updates. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 722. Taking a step forward, Shangguanwan clenched her fists nervously. After waiting for a while, nothing unexpected happened. Everything in the surroundings was still the same as before. Shangguanwan heaved a sigh of relief in her heart and continued to walk up. Wearing the pure gold sacred armor gave her more confidence in her heart. In the quiet and dark space, only the sound of the black mud and her own footsteps could be heard. Shangguanwan held her breath. Another tree root floated over. This time, Shangguanwan had experience. She just stood there and waited. As expected, the tree root flew directly in front of the ball of fire. The faint green flame lightly twirled around it in a small circle. The power contained in it was quickly transferred into the ball of fire. Shangguanwan waited at the side. Soon, the second tree root also left. That ball of fire had already become twice as big as before. Shangguanwan thought to herself. The power contained in this tree root seemed to be more abundant than expected. She waited for a moment and walked forward again. There was no cover around that ball of fire. When she was 3 steps away from that ball of fire, Shangguanwan was surprised to see that it was actually a burning rune. It was just that this rune looked very unfamiliar. Who left it here? Shangguanwan's heart was beating wildly. Then she stretched out her hand and slowly reached out towards that ball of fire. Just as her hand approached, that ball of fire suddenly rose up. It burned her hand fiercely. Hiss! Shangguanwan felt the pain and hurriedly drew her hand back. This thing didn't look special, but the temperature was extremely high. Shangguanwan lowered her head to take a look and realized that only half of her palm was burned. Because the pure gold sacred armor only covered half of her palm. The parts that were protected by the armor were intact, but the parts that were exposed were directly burned with huge blood blisters. It looked very horrifying. While Shangguanwan was surprised, a thought suddenly flashed through her mind. So the power of this pure gold holy armor is really so powerful. She hadn't even used it yet. She was just wearing it, but its defensive power was already so strong. He really didn't know how strong this pure gold armor would be after it was fully awakened. Shangguanwan licked her lips, a trace of greed and excitement flashing in her eyes. She thought for a moment and decided to use both hands at the same time. His wrist was wrapped tightly by the pure gold armor. As such, as long as they didn't touch his exposed skin, he didn't have to worry about anything. Shangguanwan slowly reached out and hugged the ball of fire from the outside. From time to time, sparks would fly in all directions, but because they all landed on the pure gold sacred armor, Shangguanwan wasn't affected at all. Her eyes were fixed on the ball of green fire as she approached it bit by bit. Boom! All of a sudden, the flame exploded. Shangguanwan turned pale with fright. Just as she was about to retreat, she found that the ball of fire suddenly flew towards her. That flame directly hit the position of her heart. Shangguanwan only felt as though there was a huge rock pressing on her chest, so heavy that she almost couldn't breathe. But this feeling disappeared in an instant. In an instant, it was as though something had forcefully passed through her chest and entered her heart. A scorching burning sensation came from her heart. Shangguanwan was extremely flustered. She didn't expect that ball of fire to enter her heart directly. With such a temperature, it wouldn't take long before her entire body would be burned to ashes. The painful burning sensation reminded her of that night in the royal family's ancestral hall. She had once thought that that was the most painful day of her life, but she didn't expect that this thing was also so torturous. Ah! Shangguanwan cried out in pain and fell onto the ground. She covered the position of her heart tightly with both hands, wanting to chase that ball of fire out. But immediately, she felt that the thing had started to move. There was an intense pain in her abdomen. Shangguan Wan's originally blood-red face turned slightly pale. The pain was really unbearable. She could only use both hands to hold the ground tightly and hit her head on the ground, wanting to faint and forget this pain. Clang. A dull sound was heard. However, she had forgotten that she was still wearing the pure gold sacred armor and her forehead was also protected. She couldn't even torture herself. But she didn't dare to really take off the pure gold sacred armor and could only endure it in the end. She didn't notice that during this process, the strange black patterns on her body were also undergoing subtle changes. After a long and incomparably torturous period, that terrifying pain finally lessened by a lot. Shangguan Wan curled up on the ground, her entire body covered in cold sweat. Because her hands were scratching the ground with force, her hands were dripping with blood and her bones could be seen. Her lips were also bitten by herself, the blood was messy and unrecognizable. She panted heavily and finally found her reason with great difficulty. The pain on her body reminded her, she was still alive. Shangguan Wan regained her senses and immediately began to check her body. In the end, she was stunned on the spot. Because that ball of fire actually landed in her dantian in the end. She was connected to the 5 treasures, so that ball of fire could spread from the flames to her dantian. Shangguan Wan stared in a daze for a while before she discovered that that thing no longer had the appearance of a runic seal. Instead, it had completely turned into a fireball. It quietly floated in the center of her dantian and that burning pain seemed to gradually dissipate. Ever since Shangguan Wan's Yuan Meridian was destroyed, her core of essence was also damaged. Right now, the place where this dark green fireball was where her core of essence should be. A majestic energy suddenly surged out from that fireball and spread to her limbs and bones. The strange patterns on Shangguan Wan's body seemed to have come alive in an instant. Not long later, those patterns seeped into her skin again. Everything happened too quickly. Shangguan Wan didn't even have time to react before she felt that the Yuan Meridian in her body was completely wrapped in a layer of dark green light. Then, a rich energy flowed out from within. Shangguan Wan suddenly trembled violently. My Yuan Meridian has been restored? As if to confirm her guess, another wave of energy surged out from the fireball in her dantian and spread along the dark green Yuan Meridian. Shangguan Wan almost couldn't believe what was happening. She confirmed it again and tried again. When she discovered that the Yuan Meridian that was wrapped in the dark green light could smoothly circulate the energy in her body, Shangguan Wan was finally sure that her Yuan Meridian had indeed been restored. The black patterns on her body had all dissipated, leaving only the space between her eyebrows. There was a final mark that looked like a strange black runic seal. At this moment, something suddenly appeared in her mind. She closed her eyes and carefully sensed it. Suddenly, her eyes widened in surprise. She could actually sense the location of everyone under Wan Yashan's control in the mystic forest. As long as she wanted to, she could devour any of their energy. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 723. Upon closer inspection, she could even identify the identities of those people. There was the Black Cavalry and disciples from various sects. In addition, there were a few people that she did not recognize. They must have been swallowed after trespassing into the mystic forest. Shangguan Wan never expected that this thing would bring her such a big surprise. Previously, she thought that she would choose a portion of these people to take action after arriving at the mystic forest. If something happened to everyone, it would inevitably arouse suspicion from outsiders. In addition, she had to make sure that she would not be discovered before she could take action. For example, when she was trapped in the enclosed space with more than 10 people. Everyone would think that those people were swallowed by the black swamp and would not associate it with her. After all, the mystic forest was full of dangers, and it was normal to encounter accidental deaths. With these conditions added together, the range of her actions was very small. But now it was different. As long as she wanted, she could quietly get rid of all these people. Shangguan Wan checked the situation in her body again. The fireball in her dantian stopped after 2 streams of power surged out. Shangguan waited for a while, but it did not move again. She thought for a while and guessed that these 2 streams of power might have been swallowed by the 2 tree roots just now. And these were only enough to repair 1/10 of her yuan meridian. If she wanted to completely recover, she had to continue. And these trapped people, added together, it should be enough, right? When she thought that her yuan meridian could be successfully recovered, Shangguan was so excited that her body trembled slightly. God knows how long she had waited for this day. No one would know that she was the one who did all this. Therefore, she could do it without worry. Perhaps she could even take this opportunity to raise her level. Shangguan was extremely excited. Her eyes were scarlet as she began to choose among these people. First, she had to choose someone with a high-level yuan meridian. This way, she would be able to convert all the power contained in their yuan meridian into her own. It would also have the best effect on the recovery of her yuan meridian. Thinking of this, a figure suddenly appeared in Shangguan's mind. Right? Where's Chu Luiwei? Her yuan meridian was definitely one of the best among these people, right? Unfortunately, Shangguan couldn't find Chu Luiwei even after looking around. It must have not been devoured by Wan Yeshan yet. Shangguan was a little unwilling. She had disliked Chu Luiwei for a long time. If she could get rid of Chu Luiwei at the same time, it would be perfect. Forget it, recovering my yuan meridian is more important. Shangguan thought. In the distance, a certain sect disciple who had been trapped was about to break free, but the tree roots on his body suddenly sped up. It pierced straight into his chest. Ah! A short and hurried cry came from his throat, but it soon stopped abruptly. This was because the power in his body had been forcefully taken away by the roots. In the blink of an eye, his life was taken. He didn't even have time to react before he lost all signs of life. His eyes were wide open, his cheeks were sunken, and his entire body was curled up into a small ball. It was very strange. The same scene played out one after another in this dark space. The entire mystic forest was collapsing. This news gave everyone a huge shock. Even Qin Yi's expression turned serious. When Chu Luiwei saw his expression, he knew that they probably hadn't experienced such a situation before. Things were more troublesome than expected. Why did the mystic forest suddenly collapse? Jianghu knitted his brows tightly. Chu Luiwei pointed at Wan Yeshan in the middle. Perhaps, it's like what Big Brother Qin said before. It's because someone touched the seal. Jianghu fell silent. If we're talking about who's most likely to do this, Shangguan is the most likely. After all, I went down from here just now. Besides, Jianghu knew what I was planning to do this time. Since that's the case, it seems like we have to go down this time. As Chu Luiwei spoke, he walked forward. Lei Laosi hurriedly followed. I'll take the lead. Chu Luiwei turned around and smiled at him. Big Brother Lei, don't worry. Since I've already contracted the red-tailed phoenix, it should be the safest. Lei Laosi immediately said. How can that do? How can I let a young lady like you take the lead? Although Her Highness has a legendary fiend now, she's still a stage 5 warrior after all. Besides, Big Brother and I have been here for quite a long time, so we roughly know how to go down. I'm also very efficient. Lei Laosi finally thought of a reasonable reason. Since he had already said so much, it would be a little strange if he continued to push it away. Chu Luiwei followed his advice and took a step back. Then I'll have to trouble Big Brother Lei. Lei Laosi's hands trembled again. He really couldn't take Her Highness calling him Big Brother again and again. Lei Laosi hurriedly rushed to the front and arrived at the position where Shangguan jumped down. This place was basically sealed off now. He held the hammer tightly with both hands, and his expression became serious and solemn. Everyone had already followed over one after another. Since they couldn't escape outside, the safest plan now was to stay together. Lei Laosi circulated the force in his body, and the aura around him surged crazily. Streaks of icy blue lightning swam around the hammer. A vast amount of pressure spread out from above. Then he shouted and smashed the hammer down harshly. Gale hammer. Violent winds blew instantly. Smoke and dust rose everywhere. Bang! There was a dull sound. Chu Liwei immediately felt the ground under her feet shaking. A crack appeared instantly. The force on the hammer kept spreading to the surroundings. The crack also rapidly expanded. The ground was quickly filled with cracks like a spider web. Boom! The ground in front of everyone collapsed again. A huge pit appeared in front of everyone. Lei Laosi jumped down first. Chu Liwei followed closely behind. Chang Wanzhou and the rest wanted to follow immediately but were stopped by Qin Yi's barrier. They turned around and saw that Qin Yi didn't seem to be in a hurry. He looked at Jiang Yuqing and the rest leisurely. "Everyone please." Jiang Yuqing narrowed his eyes and didn't argue with him as he followed them. Elder Qiushi didn't dare to rush to the front or the back. When he saw that Jiang Yuqing and the rest had gone down, he then hurriedly chased after them. Mu Qinghe glanced at Qin Yi. "I feel like I've seen this Qin Yi somewhere before. May I ask when you came to the Mystic Forest, young Master Qin?" Qin Yi's eyes were open, and his lips curved up slightly. "This is our private matter, so please forgive us for not being able to tell you. Also, Vice Admiral Mu, eldest young Master Jiang and the rest have all gone down. Aren't you going to follow them?" Mu Qinghe suppressed her doubts, turned around, and jumped down as well. Qin Yi smiled and then chased after them with Mu Hongyu and the rest. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 a.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 724. It was dark all around. The dark and cramped space was filled with a thick stench of decay and blood, and even the surrounding air seemed to have become sticky. Dumpling suddenly raised its wings. A red flame flew out instantly and streaked across the night sky like a shooting star, leaving behind a clear and bright line before finally disappearing into the abyss below. With the guidance of this flame, it was much more convenient for everyone to move forward. Lei Laosi, who was at the front, directly flew down. Chu Liwei followed closely behind. Everyone else also followed behind. "Big Brother Lei, have you guys been here before?" Chu Liwei asked softly as he descended. Lei Laosi nodded. "Once, but that was a very long time ago. Back then, they had just arrived at the Mystic Forest and weren't very familiar with everything here, so they accidentally got into this trouble. Afterward, he relied on his big brother's help to get out of this godforsaken place. Since then, the two of them had basically been staying beside that mother tree to guard the 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Naturally, they didn't encounter such a thing again. Occasionally, someone would barge in from the outside, but they would be stopped at the periphery. Chu Liwei and his group were the only ones who entered the depths of the Mystic Forest in the past year. "I wonder if it's still the same as before," Lei Laosi mumbled. Chu Liwei's heart moved and he asked again, "Oh, right. Big Brother Lei, I heard that the miasma in the Mystic Forest is actually white. Why is it that when we came here this time, it was red? Also, it was mixed with a fishy and sweet blood stench, which made one very uncomfortable." Lei Laosi frowned. "Speaking of this, actually, Big Brother and I aren't too sure what's going on. When we first came, the miasma was indeed white. We didn't go out for a long time, and when we saw it again, it was already red. But the color was still rather light then, and it gradually became darker until it became like this now." He was also curious at the start, but his big brother kept telling him not to bother about it. Their only motive here was to guard the 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Lei Laosi had always been obedient to Qin Yin, and with his carefree personality, he really didn't ask further. Chu Liwei fell into deep thought. According to Lei Laosi's words, it was highly possible that the Mystic Forest only started to change after they came here. And the time they came here, Chu Liwei speculated that they must have come here after her accident. It was even possible that Dumpling was brought here by them. Thinking of this, Dumpling suddenly glanced at her and turned her head. Chu Liwei was a little surprised. Dumpling means that it wasn't brought here by Qin Yi and the other two? Then where did it come from? Chu Liwei asked Dumpling again in his mind. "Dumpling, did you come here on your own?" Dumpling shook her head again. Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. but when he looked at Dumpling, his eyes revealed a trace of confusion. In actual fact, even it didn't know what exactly happened to its body. Back then, Shangguan Yu forcefully broke the contract with it before it lost its virginity. That was why it was able to survive. Originally, it wanted to perish together with Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing to take revenge for her. In the end, before it could do anything, it fainted. When it woke up again, its physical body was already left in the mystic forest, and its soul was split into two. Half was left in its physical body, and the other half entered a third-grade blood ferret. It didn't know what it went through in the middle at all. Dumpling's thoughts were clearly transmitted to Chu Luiyue. She thought for a long time and didn't say anything. It seems like someone helped me, but I don't know who that person is. Perhaps I can get something out of Qin Yi and Lei Laosi. However, now isn't a good time. Quickly look. There seems to be someone down there. Lei Laosi suddenly shouted. Chu Luiyue immediately suppressed the many emotions in her heart and looked in the direction Lei Laosi was pointing at. Sure enough, in that dim space, there seemed to be a vague figure. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately increased her speed. However, when she gradually got closer, Chu Luiyue gradually knitted her brows. This person doesn't seem to be Shangguan Wan. Even if Shangguan Wan turned into ashes, I would still be able to recognize her. And this person down there, even though I can't see her face, that figure definitely isn't Shangguan Wan. However, Chu Luiyue only hesitated for a moment before she continued to rush down. Seeing that she actually overtook him, Lei Laosi hurriedly increased his speed and rushed over. What are those things down there? How can I let Her Highness rush to the front? However, Lei Laosi quickly realized, to his shock, that Chu Luiyue's speed wasn't any slower than his. In this space down there, all cultivators would be suppressed to a certain extent. However, Chu Luiyue doesn't seem to be. Perhaps it's because she contracted the red-tailed phoenix? Lei Laosi couldn't be bothered to ask more as he could only follow up at full speed. After a period of time, Chu Luiyue finally stopped. Lei Laosi arrived almost at the same time. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was about to walk toward that figure, he hurriedly said, "Wait. Hold on. It's dangerous." Chu Luiyue shook her head. "Don't worry. This person is already dead." Lei Laosi was taken aback as he walked closer. It was a young lady whose calves were stuck in the black mud, and most of her body was still outside. They saw the back view from above just now, so it was no wonder that they couldn't tell. It was just that her eyes were tightly shut, and she wasn't breathing at all. She was indeed dead. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and snapped her fingers. A ball of fire appeared in her palm and instantly lit up the surroundings. And they finally saw that lady's face. Her face was purple, and her cheeks were deeply sunken in. Her facial features were distorted, and she looked like she experienced extreme torture before she died. However, there was only a wound on her chest as if something directly pierced through it, and a large patch of blood stained the wound. Chu Luiyue's pupils constricted slightly. Lei Laosi's expression also changed. How did this lady die so miserably and strangely? Who is this? The people at the back also followed one after another. Jiang Yuqing walked closer and could already tell that the lady wasn't Shangguan Wan. Chu Luiyue glanced at him. She's a disciple of the Nine-Star Alliance. In fact, this lady was the one who repeatedly mocked them previously. She was also the one who bullied Yi Ran at Thousand View Garden back then. She was still arrogant and despotic when they saw her previously, but they didn't expect her to die in the blink of an eye. Jiang Yuqing walked to the two of them. When he saw that lady's face, his expression turned cold. Chu Luiyue had been paying attention to him, and when he saw his reaction, he raised his brows slightly. How strange. Seeing this scene, Jiang Yuqing's first reaction wasn't shock or doubt. Instead, it seemed like anger? Why does it seem like he's not surprised by this scene at all? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 725. This person isn't the third princess? Elder Qiushi also walked over with a shocked expression and couldn't help but blurt out. Isn't this directly below the mother tree? The third princess clearly came down from here just now. Why isn't she here? Jiang Yuqing said coldly, "This black swamp is flowing. So much time has passed. She might have gone somewhere else." Elder Qiushi slapped his head. "I actually forgot about this. If that's the case, wouldn't it be even more difficult to find the third princess?" No one responded to him. Elder Qiushi finally felt a hint of awkwardness. At this moment, Mu Qinghe and the others also caught up. Yi Ranran saw the woman's face and exclaimed, Isn't this the new disciple of the Nine-Star Alliance?" She had the deepest impression of this woman in the entire Nine-Star Alliance. She didn't expect to meet her again in such a situation. Chu Luiyue nodded. "That's her. How can it be? Didn't the Nine-Star Alliance people protect her? By the way, where are the other disciples of the Nine-Star Alliance?" Yi Ranran muttered softly. He turned his head and looked around, but he didn't find any traces of anyone else. She seems to be the only one here. The other members of the Nine-Star Alliance aren't here. Chu Luiyue shook her head. After confirming the woman's identity, she had already checked the surroundings. There was no one else around. Mu Qinghe sized up the woman and said in a deep voice, "She probably separated from the others. She probably got separated from the others and came here alone. Then she was strangled to death by the rolling leaf firs roots." Upon closer inspection, there were indeed signs of being tightly bound by something on her body. "That one Yeshan is really scary." Yi Ranran had a lingering fear and a complicated expression on his face. Originally, he wanted to wait for a chance to find the Nine-Star Alliance to get revenge, but he didn't expect. Now, he had already guessed what had happened. Under those withered trees. Perhaps they were all trapped people. If that was the case, it meant that the 1,000 people who came to the Mystic Forest were all in such a situation. Just like this woman, there were countless people who had died here without a sound. Thinking of this, it was really chilling. She wasn't strangled to death by the tree roots. A clear and calm voice suddenly sounded. Everyone fell silent. Mu Qinghe looked at Chu Luiyue. "What did you say?" Chu Luiyue raised her chin. Her expression was nonchalant, but her gaze was very determined. If she was strangled to death by the tree roots, she shouldn't be like this. Mu Qinghe took 2 more steps forward, and with the help of the flame, he could finally see more clearly. A hint of shock flashed across his eyes. After a moment of silence, he finally nodded. "My eyes were playing tricks on me. She really didn't die for this reason." He had seen what it was like to be entangled to death by a rolling leaf fir. And this woman, hers death was really too strange. What was even weirder was, Chu Luiyue continued. The force in her body disappeared. Mu Qinghe pursed his lips. This was something he had just discovered. "What do you mean?" Mu Hongyu was comforting Yi Ranran and couldn't help but ask. Chu Luiyue explained. After a normal cultivator dies, even if their life is gone, the force stored in their body won't dissipate immediately. Especially for this kind of talented person. There's definitely a lot of force in their flesh and bones. She should have died not long ago, but the force in her body is almost all gone. Chu Luiyue's words attracted everyone's attention. As expected, Lei Laoxi's realm was high, so he was naturally more sensitive to these things. The force in her body seems to have been sucked away by something. It's completely gone. Wait, her core of essence seems to be damaged too. Lei Laoxi scanned the area with his force and had a horrified expression. Jiang Yuqing's eyelashes fluttered, and he lowered his eyes slightly. Chu Luiyue saw everything clearly from the side and sneered in his heart. It seemed that Jiang Yuqing was also very clear about what Sheng Guanwan was doing. If he remembered correctly, this woman had the Daijing Yuan Meridian. It looks like something has devoured her power. "Wan Yeshan is just a convenient tool," said Qin Yi lightly. Everyone fell silent. Given the current situation, this was probably the only possibility. What is it? How could it be so cruel and terrifying? Yi Ranran was young and had never seen such a scene before. He was both frightened and angry. Elder Qiushi was worried. "I didn't expect there to be such a terrifying thing in this place. We must find the third princess as soon as possible. Otherwise..." The corners of Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched ever so slightly. "Elder Qiushi, don't worry. The third princess is blessed by the heavens. Even if everyone else is in danger, she will definitely be safe and sound. Elder Qiushi choked and felt that Chu Liyue's words sounded weird. However, he didn't know how to refute and could only fling his sleeves. Anyway, finding the third princess is the most important thing. Chu Liyue couldn't be bothered with him. Shangguan Wan probably doesn't want us to find her yet. Help! Help! A hoarse cry for help suddenly came from afar. Chu Liyue found this voice very familiar and looked in the direction of the voice. Mu Hongyu widened her eyes. It's senior brother Zhu Hong's voice. It's actually someone from Dragon Teeth Mountain? Mu Hongyu was very worried and wanted to go over but was stopped by Qin Yi. Once you leave this barrier, you'll be swallowed by this black swamp in less than 15 minutes. Mu Hongyu was shocked and stopped in her tracks with an anxious expression. But that's senior brother Zhu Hong. He's not the only one. Chu Liyue suddenly spoke up. There seemed to be quite a few people in that dark shadow. She gave Mu Hongyu a reassuring look. Don't worry, I'll go take a look. After saying that, he flew in that direction. Perhaps it was because of the red-tailed phoenix, but she was obviously much more mobile than the others here. Mu Hongyu nodded and stared intently. Lei Laosi hurriedly followed her. Help, cough cough. Help. The closer they got, the clearer Zhu Hong's voice became. He struggled with difficulty in the black swamp and even dragged a few unconscious people behind him. The surroundings were pitch black, and his body kept falling. The energy in his body also kept flowing away. His entire body seemed to be gradually turning cold. A deep sense of despair surged into his heart. Am I really going to die here? When I came, I said that I had to take good care of the sect's disciples. But now, Zhu Hong's voice gradually became softer as he laughed bitterly. Who can hear me if I cry for help in this place? I've already exhausted all my energy, and I really can't hold on any. Zhu Hong closed his eyes. Zhu Hong? A clear female voice suddenly rang out. Zhu Hong opened his eyes and tried his best to look forward. A silhouette was heading in this direction. The red light reflected her figure like a sharp blade that tore through the darkness, giving off a myriad of colors. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 726. For a moment, Zhu Hong thought that he was hallucinating. He closed his eyes and realized that the person didn't disappear. Instead, he was still coming over. I've seen this face before. Chu Liyue. Zhu Hong mumbled in disbelief. Chu Liyue was already in front of him. When he saw Zhu Hong's situation clearly, Chu Liyue's expression froze. Half of his body had already sunk into the black swamp, and he was dragging 4 people behind him. From the looks of it, they seemed to have fainted, and it was all thanks to Zhu Hong tying them together with a rope that they were not separated from each other. However, Zhu Hong's face was pale, and he was barely breathing. He seemed to have exhausted all his energy and couldn't hold on any longer. Chu Liyue immediately reached out his hand. Zhu Hong, give me your hand. Looking at the fair and tender hand in front of him, Zhu Hong finally realized that this was really Chu Liyue. Zhu Hong reached out his hand in a daze. Lei Laosi hurriedly went forward, grabbed Zhu Hong's wrist, and lifted him up forcefully. How can I let His Highness do this? Lei Laosi was strong and had innate divine strength, so he easily dragged them out. Before Zhu Hong could react, he had already broken free from that terrifying swamp. Lei Laosi set up a barrier and surrounded the few of them. This way, they wouldn't fall so easily again. Chu Liyue smiled and glanced at Lei Laosi. Thank you for your help, big brother Lei. Lei Laosi's eyes twitched. I haven't seen His Highness for such a long time. When did he become so fond of joking? When he heard him calling him Big Brother, his legs really turned to jelly. Why, you're welcome. It's what I should do. Lei Laosi coughed and turned his head away. Chu Liyue teased him as her lips curled up slightly. Then, she looked at Zhu Hong and the few people he brought along. They were indeed from Dragon Teeth Mountain. Chu Liyue took out a bottle of pills and passed it to Zhu Hong. Replenish your energy first. Zhu Hong subconsciously raised his hand and received the elixir. He opened the cork, and a rich fragrance wafted out. Zhu Hong was shocked. The level of this pill was not low, and the ingredients used to refine it were extremely precious. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to obtain even one pill, but Chu Luiwei actually had an entire bottle. Moreover, she gave it to him so casually, which showed how generous she was. Zhu Hong was a little embarrassed, but when he thought of his current situation, he only hesitated for a moment before choosing to accept. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. A gentle force spread from his chest to his limbs and bones. Very soon, Zhu Hong's complexion became much better. He looked at Chu Luiwei with a complicated expression. I really don't know how to thank you. When I came here, I originally wanted to help Chu Luiwei and the others. Who would have thought that in the end, they would be the ones helping me? May I know who this is? He looked at Lei Laosi nervously. He was sure that this man was definitely not with them. However, his strength was extremely strong. Just by standing in front of it, one could feel the faint pressure. When did Chu Luiwei know such a powerful person? This is Big Brother Lei Laosi. We accidentally met him in the Mystic Forest, and he helped us a lot. She then looked at Lei Laosi. This is Zhu Hong. He's in charge of leading the team to Dragon Teeth Mountain this time. Lei Laosi sized Zhu Hong up. Zhu Hong instantly became nervous. You little brat, you're quite loyal. Lei Laosi chuckled. That's right. You're a man. He could tell that Zhu Hong could totally escape by himself if he wanted to. However, he still chose to bring these few people along. This persistence was really hard to come by. Zhu Hong heaved a sigh of relief and smiled bitterly. We're all from the same sect, so this is what I should do. It's just that I'm useless in the end. If I didn't meet you guys, I'm afraid. Then he returned the jade bottle to Chu Luiwei. However, Chu Luiwei shook her head. You can keep this for now. Let's go to another place and feed it to them. There seemed to be a warm current surging in Zhu Hong's heart. His lips moved, and in the end he only said 2 words seriously. Thank you. Chu Luiwei smiled. Let's go over there first. Hong Yu is very worried about you guys. Hong Yu is here too? Zhu Hong widened his eyes in shock. Chu Luiwei nodded slightly and was about to turn around. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Chu Luiwei's expression froze, and she looked up. A tree root that was as thick as an adult's waist suddenly swung over. It was very aggressive. It was extremely fast. Zhu Hong's expression changed. This thing is dangerous. They were entangled by this thing just now, and that's why they ended up in such a state. Chu Luiwei's gaze was cold as she swung her hand. A sharp dagger flew out. That tree root was actually split open from the middle by that dagger. The red juice instantly exploded. The bloody smell was so thick that it was almost suffocating. That tree root swung wildly, as if it wanted to get closer. Chu Luiwei sneered. The next moment, 2 thin flying daggers suddenly flew out from the dagger. 2 consecutive sounds were heard. That tree root was actually cut off. Bam! 2 pieces of the tree root fell together. The swamp surged and quickly drowned it. Chu Luiwei raised her hand. The dagger flew back. The 2 flying daggers that were as thin as cicadas' wings had also quickly returned. It was clean, and not a single mark was left on it. Chu Luiwei looked at it with satisfaction and put away the dagger. The entire process was smooth and smooth. Zhu Hong was dumbfounded. Just now, what did Chu Luiwei do? She actually managed to get rid of the berserk tree root so easily. Chu Luiwei took a deep look at that half of the tree root that had escaped and smiled. Let's go! At the same time, in another place, Sheng Wan groaned, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her expression was shocked and angry. Her face was flushed with blood, and her expression was distorted. The strange black rune between his eyebrows also began to shake along with it. Someone actually managed to block her attack so easily. Those people were all geniuses with the Daijing Yuan Meridian. Originally, they were already at her fingertips, but she didn't expect. Who is it? Sheng Wan gritted her teeth. Although her detection range was very wide and almost covered the entire mystic forest, there was one very important point. She could only sense the existence of those who were bound by Wan Yesan. As for the others, she couldn't know. Therefore, she couldn't guess who did it. However, there were a few people who were not in this range from the very beginning. Chu Luiwei and the group. Shang Guanwan couldn't help but suspect Chu Luiwei, but she was a little uncertain. Because she didn't think that Chu Luiwei had such strength. Could it be there were other powerful existences here that she didn't know? Shang Guanwan was puzzled. However, she only struggled for a while and temporarily put this matter aside. If this group of people couldn't do it, then it would be fine to change people. The Yuan meridian in her body had already recovered by a quarter. It wouldn't be long before it was completely healed. A faint green light flashed through Shang Guanwan's eyes. Digression, 6:00. Torturing Scum is very fast. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 727. Chu Luiwei just turned around and was about to leave when Zhu Hong suddenly stopped him. Wait! Chu Luiwei turned around and looked at him in confusion. But, is there anything else? Zhu Hong frowned and hesitantly pointed in the direction they came from. Actually, when we came over just now, we met a group of black cavalry. There were about a dozen of them, and their situation wasn't optimistic. We were too far away back then, so we missed them. I don't know how they are now. Chu Luiwei paused. You want us to go and help them? Zhu Hong looked hesitant. At first, he didn't have this thought, but he saw that Lei Laosi was extremely powerful and Chu Luiwei's combat power wasn't to be underestimated, so he had this thought. He actually didn't have much to do with those black cavalry. He just felt that it would be a pity if they died just like that. However, he also knew that he was asking too much of them. In this godforsaken place, it was already very difficult for a person to protect their own life. How would they have the extra strength to help others? If he had this ability, he would do it himself. Unfortunately, even he had to rely on Chu Luiwei and the rest to barely survive now. He already owed them enough, so how could he still ask them to do anything? No, Zhu Hong was silent for a while and finally shook his head. But just as he spoke, he was interrupted by Chu Luiwei. Where are they? What? Zhu Hong looked at Chu Luiwei in shock and couldn't react for a moment. When Chu Luiwei saw his expression, how could she not tell what he was thinking? There's also the Black Cavalry's Deputy General Mu Qinghe in our group, so it's reasonable for us to go and save them. As she spoke, she looked at Lei Laosi. Big Brother Lei, please invite everyone over. We'll go together. Okay. Lei Laosi wasn't interested in this matter, but since Her Highness had this plan, he naturally wouldn't shirk from it. Lei Laosi turned around and quickly ran back. Seeing Lei Laosi's figure disappearing quickly, Zhu Hong finally returned to his senses and looked at Chu Luiwei in shock. You really want to go? Did Chu Luiwei not know how much energy it would take to save people in this place? Why not? The corners of Chu Luiwei's lips curled up slightly. Her eyes were clear, and there was a sense of valiance between her brows. These black cavalry soldiers were indeed led by Mu Qinghe, but at the end of the day, they were once her soldiers. Shang Guanwan wanted to use these people to seize their strength and seek a future for herself. He had to ask her if she agreed to it first. Zhu Hong stared blankly at the woman in front of him. She clearly had the appearance of a peerlessly beautiful young girl, and there was even a smile on her face. But for some unknown reason, her body actually carried a faint noble aura, as if she was looking down upon the world. For a moment, Zhu Hong felt extremely at ease. It was as if she would definitely be able to save everyone if she said she was going to save them. This kind of nobility and pride emitted from her bones definitely wasn't something that ordinary people could have. Didn't they say that Chu Luiwei came from an ordinary background? But from the looks of it now, it was very different from the rumors. Recalling how he said that he would take care of these people in Chongshu Pavilion, Zhu Hong's face flushed a little. All of them had probably underestimated Chu Luiwei. Lei Laosi quickly brought the rest of the people over. When Mu Hongyu saw Zhu Hong and the rest in a sorry state, she was worried and hurriedly asked, Senior brother Zhu Hong, how are you guys? We're fine. Just now, Liu and Big brother Lei saved us and even gave us elixirs. We're fine now. When Zhu Hong saw that Mu Hongyu was safe and sound, he heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that you guys are safe and sound. When we first saw that you guys were missing, we were still rather worried. But from the looks of it now, those worries were unnecessary. From the looks of it, the few people who followed Chu Luiyue were clearly the safest. Mu Hongyu then heaved a sigh of relief. Other than Zhu Hong, the others were still unconscious and in a sorry state. But looking at Zhu Hong's appearance, he did seem to be much better. We had an accident back then. Forget it. All these aren't important. We'll talk about it in the future. The most important thing is that everyone is fine. Mu Hongyu looked at Chu Luiyue gratefully. Thank you so much. Chu Luiyue smiled gently. Zhu Hong and the rest helped us previously, so it's only right for them to help us now. Zhu Hong was instantly embarrassed. Chu Luiyue isn't talking about the incident where he stood up for us at Pingliang Square, right? What kind of help can that be considered? Chu Luiyue saved our lives. Zhu Hong, you said that there's a portion of the Black Cavalry over there? Mu Qing had directly asked in a deep voice. Zhu Hong's expression also became much more serious as he nodded. I did see some people just now, but I don't know if they're still there. But it hasn't been too long, so we should be able to find them smoothly. Mu Qing nodded. Then I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to lead the way. Vice Admiral Mu, you're welcome. Zhu Hong immediately said. After saying that, he lifted his foot and was about to walk in that direction. Stuff. An impatient voice sounded. It was Elder Qiushi. His expression was very sour as he looked at Mu Qinghe. Vice Admiral Mu, are you really going to save those people now? Have you forgotten that our top priority is to find the third princess? If we all go to save the Black Cavalry now, what will happen to the third princess? If the important matter of finding the third princess is delayed because of this, Vice Admiral Mu, can you bear the responsibility? A trace of impatience and viciousness finally appeared on Mu Qinghe's face, which had never changed for the past 10,000 years. I never said that I wouldn't look for the third princess. But now there's no news of the third princess, and there's no clue at all. Even if we look for her, where are we going to find her? As the Deputy General of the Black Cavalry, I naturally have the responsibility to save my own soldiers. Elder Qiushi has always been worried about the third princess. Why don't you look for her yourself? You, Elder Qiushi's face turned red and white. He was about to curse when he met Mu Qinghe's fierce and cold gaze. His heart trembled, and he swallowed the rest of his words. If Elder Qiushi doesn't plan to look for the third princess yourself and wants to follow us, then please don't mention this again in the future. We know very well what we should do and what we shouldn't do. There's no need for Elder Qiushi to guide us. Mu Qinghe's words were very rude, and she didn't leave Elder Qiushi any face at all. Elder Qiushi had never been insulted in public like this before, and he could only gnash his teeth in hatred. He looked at Jianghu, but he saw that Jianghu didn't intend to speak. Clearly, he was also on Mu Qinghe's side. Elder Qiushi secretly hated him. Mu Qinghe had been very low-key for more than a year, especially because of her previous identity as the Empress Concubine's confidant. She was cautious in her words and actions. Because of this, Elder Qiushi felt that he was superior to Mu Qinghe. He didn't expect that when he became tough, he was still the same as before. Mu Qinghe looked at Zhu Hong. Please lead the way. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 728. Then, under Zhu Hong's lead, everyone moved forward together and rushed in the direction they came from. After being scolded, Elder Qiushi finally shut his mouth obediently. This time, everyone's ears could finally be at peace. Zhu Hong had fed each of them medicine, and it didn't take long for them to wake up one after another on the way. Luckily, their injuries weren't too serious. With the effects of Chu Luiyue's pills, they could barely keep up. After a period of time, Zhu Hong finally stopped, but his brows slowly furrowed. That was because there were only a few corpses left that were almost completely submerged. From their clothes and faces, they were indeed the Black Cavalry. However, the other people were nowhere to be found. Those people from before were all here. Why are there only these few left now? Muttered Zhu Hong. Mu Qinghe looked around, and her face was so cold that it seemed like there was a layer of frost on it. This black swamp is flowing much faster than before. Chu Luiwei and the others hadn't been here before, so they couldn't compare. However, the remaining people, including Jiang Yuqing and the others, all realized this after taking a closer look. As expected, perhaps it's because of this that those people left this place? Guessed Zhu Hong. I just don't know how they're doing now. If they're still alive, everything will be fine. But if they're dead, it should be because of the movements caused by that mother tree. As Mu Qinghe spoke, she looked up ahead. That was the direction where the black swamp was flowing. After stopping for a while, he took the lead and walked forward. However, Chu Luiwei purposely slowed down and walked to Qin Yi's side. Big brother Qin, the seal you mentioned just now. What exactly is it referring to? Qin Yi lightly shook his head. I only know that there's a seal below, but I haven't seen it personally, so I'm not very clear about it. As he spoke, he glanced at Tuanzi calmly. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. What he means is, Dumpling might know a thing or two. Dumpling blinked. Chu Luiwei calmed down. It seemed that it did have some understanding. Dumpling, why didn't you tell me before? Chu Luiwei asked inwardly. Dumpling buried her head in her shoulder. Because it didn't want her to go. It had been here for a long time and had vaguely guessed something. There was probably something under the seal that was not to be trifled with. From the very beginning, it did not want Chu Luiwei to be involved in this matter. That was why he didn't say anything. Chu Luiwei patted its head with a slightly restrained expression. Dumpling had already broken through to become a divine beast now. To be able to make it so fearful, it was most likely not simple. And Shangguanwan, she vaguely felt that something was wrong. However, since they were already here, there was no way to retreat. They could only face it head-on. The group continued forward. They were very fast. After about half an hour, they finally seemed to hear some movement in front. Mu Qinghe immediately looked over and saw a group of faint figures. It was the Black Cavalry. However, the number of people seemed to be much more than what Zhu Hong had said earlier. At a rough glance, there were at least more than 100 people. Mu Qinghe was about to go over when she suddenly realized that there were tree roots tightly wrapped around those people. Especially those people outermost. Almost all of them were covered in scales and were on the verge of death. A few of them were even unconscious. She didn't know if they had fainted or the tree roots seemed to be trying to separate them, but the soldiers were still hugging each other tightly. They continued to entangle with those crazy tree roots. This scene actually seemed a bit solemn and stirring. The people who followed all fell into silence. Looking at this scene, they couldn't hide their shock. Mu Qinghe's expression was terrifyingly cold. She immediately wanted to go forward. Vice Admiral Mu, rushing forward rashly at this time, I don't think it's appropriate. Chu Luiwei suddenly spoke. Mu Qinghe turned around. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife. What are you trying to say? Chu Luiwei smiled and pointed at the spot where the roots were intertwined. As long as we get rid of this thing, we can naturally rescue them. Otherwise, it's just a waste of effort. Mu Qinghe stared at Chu Luiwei for a while. The anger and impulse in her heart finally gradually suppressed. Chu Luiwei was right. In the current situation, they could only use their wits and not force. The scene just now had a huge impact on her. For a moment, she actually almost rushed forward. You have a way? Chu Luiwei nodded. Yes. A tree root flew over. Shangguanwan raised her hand and lightly drew on the tree root. The bright red liquid quickly seeped into her palm. Then, it entered the dark green fireball in her dantian. The tempered power surged out from the fireball again and spread to Shangguanwan's limbs and bones. Sensing that another part of the Yuan meridian in her body had been restored, Shangguanwan let out a long sigh. The feeling of having power again was simply too satisfying. She already couldn't remember how long she had waited for this day. As long as she persevered for a while and devoured enough power, she would be able to recover completely. Shangguan flicked the tree root away and looked at her hands. Her skin had gradually returned to its normal color from its initial blood-red color. She believed that it wouldn't be long before she could. Suddenly, Shangguan's expression changed. Her chest trembled violently. Her legs went soft and she knelt on the ground. The pure gold sacred armor hit the stone platform and let out a muffled sound. Shangguan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The net that she had carefully planned was directly cut off. That was more than 100 people. Originally, as long as she succeeded this time, she would basically be able to recover completely. But she was actually stopped by someone just like that. The energy in Shangguan's chest and abdomen went berserk, almost tearing her internal organs apart. Blood kept flowing out from her mouth and quickly dyed the ground red. Some even fell on the chest of the pure gold sacred armor. "Who is it? I will cut you into pieces." Shangguan shouted herself hoarse. The corners of her eyes were scarlet and her face was filled with madness. Suddenly, the void in front of her trembled violently. Then, a colorful stream of light streaked across. A ball of scarlet flames wrapped in a vast aura attacked her glabella. Digression, 12 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 729. Shangguan was shocked and immediately retreated. At the same time, she set up a barrier in front of her. She didn't know if it was because of the fireball, but the barrier she set up now had a faint green color. Boom! That scarlet flame hit the barrier hard. A loud boom sounded. The barrier shook violently. Shangguan's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. Half paralyzed on the ground, she looked at the scarlet flame that suddenly appeared with fear and anger. She was afraid that it would rush over in the next moment. Fortunately, the power of the barrier was much stronger than she had expected. After an intense battle, the crimson flame was intercepted. It was just that the color of the barrier seemed to have become lighter. However, Shangguan didn't notice this at this moment. When she saw that the scarlet flame was unable to break through the barrier and finally retreated, she finally let out a long breath. It seemed that the power she had devoured during this period of time was still useful. But where did that scarlet flame come from? Shangguan supported her body and stood up with difficulty. She took a step forward and stared at the flame. Such a strong and bright red color. She seemed to have seen it before, and that flame was also floating quietly in the air. It didn't move forward or backward. This made Shangguan have the illusion that she was being stared at. She felt uncomfortable all over. She clenched her teeth and wanted to get rid of that flame. But at this moment, she had just dodged that attack with great difficulty. If she rashly faced it head-on, she wasn't sure what would happen. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. There were some bloodstains on the pure gold sacred armor. This flame, that's right. Shangguan's eyes suddenly lit up. Wasn't Chu Liyue's flame the same color? Could it be that Chu Liyue made a move? No. Impossible. Shangguan frowned again. Chu Liyue was here. It was already a problem whether he could protect his own life. How could he give her such a blow? She looked at the ball of flame again and her gaze suddenly froze. Within the flames, there seemed to be a blurry figure. She stared at him carefully without blinking. Suddenly, she sucked in a breath of cold air. The thing inside seemed to be a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. It looked a little different from the 9-colored heavenly pheasant. And the pressure was even stronger. Just as Shangguan was guessing, the figure in the flames suddenly raised his head. Then he opened his eyes. A brilliant rainbow light flashed past. Shangguan's heart skipped a beat. She reacted almost immediately and rushed forward. His origin power transformed into a sword and stabbed out viciously. However, that ball of scarlet flames instantly exploded. Bang! In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. It really was her. Chu Liyue opened her eyes, and a cold, Murderous intent flashed across her eyes. Although it was only a glance, it was enough for her to recognize that it was indeed Shangguan Wan. She looked a little different from before. Although her appearance and figure were still the same, the expression on her face, there seemed to be something wrong with it. In addition, the black rune between her brows looked extremely strange as well. What made her feel the most disgusted was that Shangguan Wan was actually wearing the pure gold armor. Chu Liwei pursed her lips tightly and her face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. She had obtained the pure gold armor by accident back then and had always treasured it. She didn't expect that Shangguan Wan would take it for her own. "Liu, how is it? Did you find out anything?" Mu Hongyu's voice pulled Chu Liwei back to her senses. She closed her eyes and looked up. Her eyes were clear and calm. She nodded. "That seems to be the middle of the swamp. There's a person there, but I can't see who it is." "It's already very impressive to be able to find out this much." Mu Hongyu sighed. Chu Liwei smiled and patted Dumpling who was on her shoulder. "It's all thanks to Dumpling." She had finally persuaded Dumpling to help just now. It was now a mythical beast and had stayed here for more than a year, so it definitely knew more about everything here than they did. As expected, Dumpling directly found Shangguan Wan's location. As for her, because she had a contract with Dumpling and their minds were connected, she could easily see everything that Dumpling had found out. Shangguan Wan was very vigilant. For safety, she didn't let Dumpling stay for too long and quickly retreated after taking a glance. She didn't leave any clues for Shangguan Wan. Recalling Shangguan Wan's ferocious expression when she suddenly came back to her senses, Chu Liwei sneered in her heart. After doing so many dirty things in secret, Shangguan Wan was naturally more guilty than anyone else and was more afraid of being discovered. Even if she was the high and mighty third princess of the Tianling dynasty, she definitely wouldn't be able to survive if this matter was spread out. Using such a despicable and insidious method to devour other people's forces and take their lives, just to help herself recover her cultivation, once such a behavior was exposed, what awaited Shangguan Wan was the cursing of thousands of people and the punishment of never being reincarnated. Of course she was afraid. At this moment, Shangguan Wan was probably panicking, right? Thinking of this, Chu Liuyue's mood improved a lot. She looked at Mu Qinghe. "Vice Admiral Mu, how are the soldiers?" Mu Qinghe had just distributed the pills to the last batch of black cavalry. Hearing this, he raised his head and looked at Chu Liwei with a complicated expression. 4 of them can't make it, and 21 of them are seriously injured. The rest are fine. Chu Liwei swept a glance at those people. The situation just now was so dangerous, and the casualties were already better than expected. This was also because most of the black cavalry that came this time had stayed in the Dahuang swamp before. If it were ordinary soldiers, the result would definitely be worse. Mu Qinghe paused and said, "Thank you." Chu Liwei smiled faintly. "Didn't Vice Admiral Mu already thank me just now? Being able to save them is the result of everyone's efforts. Vice Admiral Mu doesn't have to thank me alone." Mu Qinghe pursed his lips tightly. Although Chu Liwei said it casually, everyone present saw what happened just now clearly. Chu Liwei was the one in charge of everything. If it weren't for her and the red gold phoenix who cut off the coiled tree roots and burned more than half of them, the rest of them wouldn't be able to help even if they wanted to. Her actions were swift and almost everyone was shocked on the spot. Only then did they understand that Chu Liwei, who had broken through to the 5th stage, was stronger than they had imagined. Chu Liwei didn't claim credit, but Mu Qinghe couldn't accept this kindness with a clear conscience. The black cavalry was very important to him, and he was indeed grateful to be able to save these people. As the Deputy General of the Black Cavalry, this gratitude is necessary. Chu Liwei tucked her hair behind her ear and smiled. "Vice Admiral Mu, you're welcome. This is what I should do." She naturally had to save her people. "Let's go to the center of the swamp as soon as possible and capture the mastermind behind the scenes." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 730. Chu Liuyue's suggestion received everyone's approval. Now, They basically knew that someone purposely caused such a huge commotion in the mystic forest. Those tree branches that crazily devoured the cultivator's strength were obviously being controlled by someone. They could only leave after they dealt with the mastermind. Chu Liuyue's gaze swept across the black cavalry soldiers. Actually, she still had an impression of some of them. However, things were still the same now, but the people had changed. She looked at Qin. Big brother Qin, these 20 people? Do you have a way to take care of them? Other than the few that can't be saved, the remaining 21 people aren't in good condition either. The best solution is to let them stay and rest properly. If I force them to follow the main group forward, I'm afraid. Qin stared at her intently as if in deep thought. It seems like Her Highness still wants to help. He paused for a moment and said, I can help them set up a barrier and let them stay here peacefully. As long as the extremely dangerous situation from before doesn't happen again, there shouldn't be a problem. Chu Liyue heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you, big brother Qin. Qin Yi's lips curved up slightly as he lowered his eyes slightly. A tinge of helplessness and indulgence flashed across his long and narrow eyes. Her Highness has already changed into another identity, and her appearance and figure are completely different from before. However, her personality doesn't seem to have changed much. He raised his hand and waved it lightly. A cyan-colored barrier was formed in an instant. It protected the 20 people within it. The barrier emitted a faint glow and was dense with boundless suppression. It was frightening. One of the black cavalry soldiers reacted first as he cupped his fists and said seriously to Qin Yi, Thank you, young Master Qin. This voice instantly reminded the others. All the soldiers thanked him gratefully. Qin Yi chuckled. You don't have to thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank Luyu. If she didn't save all of you first, we wouldn't be able to talk about anything else. Besides, if she didn't say anything, I wouldn't have bothered to get involved in this mess. Who asked them to be soldiers led by Mu Qinghe? Qin Yi knew that what happened back then actually had nothing to do with these soldiers, so he really couldn't blame them. But when he saw Mu Qinghe here, he felt very unhappy, and even felt annoyed looking at these people. All the officers and soldiers turned their heads to thank Chu Liyue. Thank you, Miss Chu. Even though most of them were injured, their thanks were still filled with energy and sincerity. They had all experienced countless life and death situations, so they naturally knew how precious life was. Chu Liyue had saved so many of their lives. How could they not thank him? A black cavalry soldier standing at the front suddenly lowered his voice and said, That's right. Miss Chu, my name is Tian Zhuangzhuang. If you need anything in the future, just let me know. I, Tian Zhuangzhuang, will definitely not shirk my duty. He didn't say which squad he belonged to in the black cavalry. He only said his name. This meant that he was expressing his gratitude personally. Chu Liyue's eyes curved. Miss Chu, I'm Zhou Kaiyun. We owe you our lives, so we'll do whatever you say in the future. As Zhou Kaiyun spoke, he secretly glanced at Mu Qinghe and scratched his head at Chu Liyue in embarrassment. Of course, that's when we're not wearing the black cavalry armor. When they wore the armor, they didn't have a name and only had the title Black Cavalry. Obeying military orders was a soldier's duty. The black cavalry, especially the ones led by Mu Qinghe, had always been strict with military orders and followed them to the letter. But when they took off their armor, they were themselves. Those who could fight their way out of Da Huang Swamp were all iron-blooded good men. How could they not repay a favor? I, Jiang Mingshan too. Me too. And Xinji. And voices rang out one after another. The deep and powerful voices reverberated, as if they wanted to tear apart this dark and cramped space. Chu Liyue felt something surging in her chest. She knew. She always knew. These people. She took a deep breath and suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. I understand everyone's intentions. This is actually a small matter, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Those who need to recuperate, stay behind. The rest will go together. When this is over, we'll look for you again and return together. Chu Liyue pacified the soldiers with a few words. Those who should stay all consciously stood on the other side. As for the large group who were about to leave, after hearing Chu Liyue's words, They all stood together with high morale. Mu Qinghe looked at this scene and was secretly shocked. Chu Luiwei and these soldiers had only just met, but she could already easily make them obey her. She seemed to have some kind of inexplicable aura that could make people unconsciously listen to her and do as she said. Honorable, dignified, but also full of affinity. Without batting an eyelid, she controlled the entire scene. She was like a natural superior. Even if she was only a teenage girl and came from an ordinary background, she did not feel the slightest bit out of place when commanding so many people. It was as if it was supposed to be like this. Mu Qinghe had fought her way up from the bottom, so she knew the temperament of these soldiers best. They had seen countless life and death situations. Their flesh, blood, tendons, and bones were almost all tempered. On the surface, they looked well-behaved, but in fact, they were very stubborn. Other than their generals, they would almost never listen to anyone else's orders. Even Shangguan could not completely control the Black Cavalry. This was also another important reason why she insisted on bringing him this time. Only with Mu Qinghe would these people unconditionally obey Shangguan's requests. But Chu Luiwei, probably it was still because she saved them today? Mu Qinghe thought silently in her heart. Looking at Chu Luiwei's pure appearance, she felt that she was overthinking. These soldiers also understood that even if they wanted to repay Chu Luiwei, they definitely could not use the name of the Black Cavalry. Otherwise, who would the Black Cavalry belong to? Perhaps she was really overthinking. Mu Qinghe suppressed these thoughts and moved forward with everyone. After the red flame disappeared, Shangguan fell into deep fear and worry. Who was watching her? Who saw her? Who knew what she was doing? Previously, she thought that she would not be noticed by anyone if she stayed here, but now she knew that she was ridiculously wrong. She anxiously paced back and forth. With such a potentially dangerous existence, she really could not feel at ease. Oh no. Now, I should recover my Yuan Meridian first. Just now, she had prepared for a long time and was about to attack the Black Cavalry, but she did not expect to be stopped. Now, she had to find them again. Her gaze turned sharp, and she attacked in another direction. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 731. Actually, there were still quite a number of people left who could do it. For example, the disciples from those sects were almost all extremely outstanding geniuses. Needless to say, the Daijing Yuan Meridian was middle grade or even high grade. Shangguan checked around and quickly chose someone. The Yuan Meridian in her body had already recovered by more than half. She only needed a few more times to succeed. This made Shangguan feel much more at ease. As long as she could complete this task, nothing else mattered. She licked her lips, and the dark green light in her eyes flashed again. However, she didn't know it herself. Just as she held her breath and was about to make a move, a strange sound suddenly came from behind her. Her heart skipped a beat, and she immediately looked back vigilantly. At the same time, she waved her force. At this moment, her force had already turned into a light green color. It transformed into a sharp blade in midair and quickly swept over. Crack! The sound of something shattering was heard. She focused her eyes, and only then did she see that when the black swamp surged, a ghastly white skeletal hand had floated out. Her attack just now had directly cut off the hand bone. The mud churned and quickly swallowed the bone and disappeared. Phew! Shangguan patted her chest and let out a breath with lingering fear. She thought that that thing had come to spy on her again. She turned around, intending to concentrate and do it again. A bright scarlet flame suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. Ah! Shangguan screamed and immediately retreated. At the same time, she set up the barrier again. However, this time, the red flame didn't come forward again. It just floated there quietly. However, this made Shangguan even more flustered. As expected, someone was spying on her in the dark. She was flustered and furious. She immediately went forward to get rid of that thing. However, a rainbow-colored light flashed, and the flame disappeared again. It took another look. Shangguan was so angry that her liver hurt. Her chest and abdomen were suffocating, as if they would explode in the next moment. The other party was extremely cunning, appearing so suddenly and disappearing so quickly that Shangguan had no time to react, let alone do anything. Shangguan was still angry for a while. She gritted her teeth and decided to solve the problem of her Yuan meridian first. However, her state of mind had been completely disrupted by that ball of flame. Devouring energy to reconstruct the Yuan meridian was an extremely exhausting task. Right now, Shangguan's heart was in a mess, and her mind was in a mess. She couldn't do anything at all. She was so angry that she paced back and forth on the platform. The boots of the pure gold armor made a sound on the ground. It was cold and crisp, but it also carried a trace of heavy pressure. Patter! Something seemed to have sunk. Shangguan looked down, her eyebrows furrowed tightly. The bloodstains on the pure gold armor were slowly condensing into blood droplets before dripping onto the ground. That sound just now was the sound of blood dripping down from the arm that had accidentally rubbed against it. Shangguan's heart skipped a beat. She then looked at her chest and realized that the situation was the same here. These were all intentionally or unintentionally done by her. At first, she didn't pay much attention to it, but now, why does it seem like something is wrong? After the bloodstains dripped down, the pure gold armor was still clean and neat. It didn't look like it had been stained with blood before. Could it be that this pure gold armor is originally like this? Shangguan muttered in a low voice. She had only seen Shangguan wear this pure gold armor before. It was her first time wearing it, so she didn't know much about it. There were actually many traces of battle on it, but there were no bloodstains. Perhaps it was really because this pure gold armor wasn't stained with blood, Shangguan thought to herself. When she thought that someone was secretly watching her, she became frustrated again. The other party was watching her so closely. Could it be that they had discovered something? And every time she wanted to try again, that fireball would suddenly appear. This made Shangguan uneasy. She couldn't concentrate on repairing her Yuan meridian. After a long time, she still didn't find anything. Just as Shangguan was at her wit's end, the black rune in between her brows suddenly floated down and swayed in front of her eyes. Shangguan's pupils shrank. A trace of deep fear flashed across the depths of her eyes. A hoarse voice suddenly sounded from the rune. "Are you so useless?" That voice was low and hoarse. It was hard to tell if it was a man or a woman, but it instantly made Shangguan's face turn pale. Who are you?" A low laugh came from the rune, containing undisguised mockery. "Don't you know who you relied on to be where you are today? Why, you don't want to admit it now." After her guess was confirmed, Shangguan's face instantly turned even uglier. All along, she knew that there was a mysterious existence in her body. She had heard this voice before, but only twice. The first time was many years ago. It was also that time that made her want to kill Shangguan. She had made up her mind to snatch everything from her. The other time was the night Shangguan died. At that time, her Yuan meridian had been completely destroyed by Shangguan. It was this voice that had appeared and told her how to restore her Yuan meridian. It was not that Shangguan was not afraid, but she also yearned for Jianghu. She wanted to obtain power and authority. She wanted to obtain everything that Shangguan once had. Therefore, she had always obeyed this voice. She didn't expect that it would appear in such a form today. Countless guesses flashed through Shangguan's mind as she looked at the strange black rune. She tried her best to calm herself down, but her body was trembling violently. "So it's really you? Please forgive me for not noticing it just now." Slap. It was as if an invisible hand had slapped Shangguan hard on the face. The crisp sound of a slap instantly rang out. Shangguan fell hard to the ground. Her helmet was also thrown off. Half of her face instantly became red and swollen. Blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. "You're getting bolder by the day to play tricks in front of me." The voice in the rune was cold and sinister. Shangguan struggled to stand up. "I didn't." Slap. This time, it was the other half of her face that was slapped. Digression, 6 a.m., Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 732. Shangguan fell heavily to the ground again. Her hairpin was knocked to the ground, and her hair was scattered messily. This time, she was hit until she saw stars and her vision turned black. She opened her mouth, and her lips and teeth were filled with a strong smell of blood. All she spat out was blood. Her entire face was numb and numb. After a short pause, the intense pain surged up like a tide. But this was not as strong as the deep fear that suddenly erupted in her heart. She knew that this mysterious person was very strong, but she didn't know that he was so terrifying. She had been easily dealt with. One had to know that her current strength was almost at the early stage of a Stage 8 warrior. But when the other party attacked, she didn't even have time to react. She could only be beaten. These two slaps completely made Shangguan aware of the gap between her and the other party. Now, are you willing to tell the truth? That voice sounded faintly, like a demon's voice echoing in her ears. Shangguan's heart trembled violently. She curled up and knelt with her head lowered. This junior knows her mistake. This time, she didn't dare to play any tricks. She could only obediently lower her head and admit her mistake. Please give this junior another chance. If you have any orders, this junior will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. In the past 2 years, Shangguan had never knelt to anyone, let alone begging in such a humble tone. Father was in a coma, and she was the ruler of the Tianling dynasty. She was second only to one person and above all. So kneeling at this time made her feel quite ashamed in her heart. But she didn't dare not kneel. Her little life was in the other party's hands. If you had done this earlier, wouldn't there have been so much trouble? The black rune swayed gently and sneered. Shangguan didn't dare to move. Your Yuan meridian has long been damaged by the Tianjing Yuan meridian. Logically speaking, it can't be repaired. It was me who gave you a chance to live. Now the opportunity is in front of you, but you are so useless. You are indeed mud that can't support a wall. That person's tone was slow, but there was an air of superiority. Every word was very straightforward, not leaving any face for Shangguan. Shangguan's face turned red and white, but she didn't dare to refute. Senior, please guide me. Shangguan was not stupid. She knew that the other party must have come for her Yuan meridian. Sure enough, the man continued. Your position has already been discovered. There's no point in running. You might as well make use of the time to heal your Yuan meridian. After you find the target, I will help you set up a barrier so that no one will disturb you. As long as you stay calm, everything else is not a problem. Shangguan was a little hesitant. But, Senior, there must be someone who knows what I'm doing now. If the news spreads, so what if I know? As long as you don't bump into them on the spot, no one can do anything to you. Don't forget who you are. She woke Shangguan up with a start. Her heart shook as she suddenly understood what was going on. That's right. She was the third princess of the Tianling dynasty. As long as no one saw her with their own eyes, who could force her to confess? If she was really exposed in the future, wouldn't it be fine if she denied it? When Shangguan died, the entire Tianling dynasty was shaken. Countless people suspected the cause of her death, and some people even almost found out that she and Jianghu were involved, but didn't they solve the problem safely in the end? Thank you for your advice, Senior. No need to thank me. I have my own reasons for helping you. I'll give you 15 minutes. If you still can't do it, don't blame me for not giving you a chance. Shangguan didn't dare to ask any more questions. She quickly sat cross-legged and began to look for a suitable person. The black rune floated back between her eyebrows. In fact, this process didn't feel anything, but Shangguan felt that there was something extra on her forehead, and it was very uncomfortable. She held her breath and closed her eyes. As she looked for someone, she thought to herself, this black rune. Actually, even she herself did not know when it had entered her body. All these years, other than the 2 times it took the initiative to speak, it almost didn't exist. Shangguan was vaguely worried, but she had always tried her best to ignore this matter and forget its existence. She didn't expect it to suddenly appear today. Moreover, it appeared in such a strange way. Don't try anything funny. Otherwise, your fate will be even more miserable and pitiful than you can imagine. The voice sounded coldly in her mind. Shangguan shivered and responded. Then she forced herself to retract her thoughts. The entire mystic forest, except for the area where the mother tree was, had completely collapsed. As a result, all the people who were trapped underground followed the black swamp and flowed towards them. Shangguan roughly checked and was suddenly surprised to find that the number of people she could sense was much less than before. It seemed that there were fewer people from the Black Cavalry and a small number of disciples from the sect. She felt a sense of suffocation in her chest. After wasting so much time just now, it was no wonder that there were fewer people. With so many people, there would definitely be people who could break free. Especially those who were in groups, their strength was extremely strong when they were united. If she didn't use some special methods, it would be difficult to keep them. Just like the 100 or so Black Cavalry from before, she had spent a lot of effort to trap them. She didn't expect that in the end. Shangguan took a deep breath and found a good target. Those people from the Purple Shao Sword sect. What Shangguan didn't know was that during the period of time when she didn't do anything, Chu Luiwei and the others met several groups of people and gathered them all. Most of them were from the Black Cavalry, and a small number were disciples from the sect. Fortunately, other than one of the disciples from Dragon Teeth Mountain who had died, the rest were all found. Although they were all injured to different extents, they persevered and kept up after some simple treatment. Speaking of which, this was all thanks to Zhu Hong. At that time, he was the first to discover that Mu Hongyu had left. He had planned to bring people to look for her, but something happened to Jianghu. He made a prompt decision and dragged everyone from Dragon Teeth Mountain together. When they fell into the swamp in the end, they were still together. It was only later that he was unable to hold on and split into two groups. However, the distance between them wasn't very far. Other than that, there were also disciples from Holy Flame Palace and Tianji Mansion who were found along the way. Roughly speaking, there were more than 300 people in this group. Including a small number of people who had to stay in place because of their serious injuries, there were almost 400 people. Unknowingly, Chu Luiwei had become the backbone of the group. After all, only Chu Luiwei knew how to find the mastermind behind all of this. In addition, she had contracted a divine beast, which attracted countless envy and admiration from the crowd. Even Jianghu, who had the highest status, had a slightly inferior presence. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks and looked ahead. There's someone ahead. I'll go take a look first. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.